Well, here we go for another fantastic conversation. I'm telling you, we have a man of many personalities, I think, and we're going to try to get every single one of these personalities through to you today. Now, that's a tall order, but and I'm sure
6-hour interview.
Hey, I didn't book the studio for that long. We'll be able to make that happen, Scott. But nonetheless, most notably for what could be looked at as maybe the world's most loved or most hated man, none other than the one and only Donald Trump, arguably the best impersonator as it relates to Donald himself, has been featured in
I have
almost
been told that. I'm not going to disagree.
So without Donald derailing the conversation and taking over it, I really find thrill in what we just talked about, even from the position of you're dyslexic. And I share that same experience of realizing that dyslexia was almost a stunt to how I was able to learn and how I was able to grow, and realize when I was reading a book that I would skip a whole paragraph, but I was looking at the next line and somehow I just missed here. And then I wasn't able to remember certain things.
My thing was, you read a paragraph and go, what did I just read?
That's right.
And you go back right up to the time and you read it again, and it just doesn't stick.
Ever. It makes you wonder if you're weird or you got some issues, and then you go and you do the research and you say, well, this whole dyslexic thing kind of adds up. Yeah. So in your case, how did you leverage that for future benefit? Or was this a discovery that you made later on in life? Or were you realizing this as part of a study or a test you did when you were younger, and then you go, wow, this is affecting me to some extent?
Well, it's funny because all learning disabilities kind of interlock with each other. And when I was a kid, I was like right out of the gate, I was a ham, and I'm pretty high energy even every day. Right. That's the ADHD. That's the thing that kind of keeps me going. And a lot of people with ADHD have dyslexia. Not all, but a lot. There's a lot of, because I've done a lot of reading on this. So there's a lot of overlapping with that. But when I was a kid and, I was 5 years old and I was doing voices and impressions for my neighbors. So I would watch Ed Sullivan and I had a severe speech impediment.
Okay.
But when I did the voices, I had no impediment. So I would come out, this is like the late 60s, and not late 60s, like 60, whatever, when I was 5 years old. But now, right here in our shoe, the fabulous Garbacho brothers and Girl Scout Troop 625, girls stand up and show us your cookies. And I had a really good memory, and I would watch John Biner or David Fry or any of the comedians. The Impressionists really blew my mind, because I was struggling with an impediment. When I spoke normally, people said I sounded like Elmer Fudd. So when I went into first grade, I was there for kindergarten, but in first grade, they diagnosed me with the impediment. So for the next 8 years, I did speech therapy 2 times a week, and they corrected all of my speech issues. I still have, if you spend a lot of time with me, I still have some speech and pronunciation issues. But at the same time, they're teaching me all this stuff, how to correct my voice. I'm learning about throat placement, nasal placement, the vocal mask, how to enunciate properly, which is perfect for Trump because he over-enunciates, but not all the time. So like different voices and how to kind of make sounds and push sounds out, and how I should actually, when I speak, and this is an acting thing too, but when you speak, your voice should be right about here. You have the people who talk in the back of their throat and all those types of things. So I learned all of these lessons, and then at the same time, my school district, Wissahickon, which is outside of Philadelphia, they started testing me for other stuff because the speech therapists were talking to the other therapists going, he's relatively intelligent, he's very vocal, and they were like, well, his grades are horrible and he can't read. And that's when they started testing me on all these other things. And I don't think dyslexia at that time was even named. It may have been, but they just couldn't understand why I couldn't read. But my dyslexia when I was a kid was the kind of two things would happen. Either the letters would lift from the page and then kind of move around slightly, or first letter, end letter would switch, which was terrible. So I just couldn't enjoy reading and I couldn't really absorb it. I had a great memory, and if I watched something on television, I could remember it. Going back to what we were talking about pre-show about, the Delmonicos, like I could tell you the whole thing. So, and I wanted to read. When all the Harry Potter books came out, I've read them I use Audible, but I see these kids who were my age when I was struggling to reading a book that's the size of a doorstop.
Yeah.
I couldn't get through one of those Scholastic, I'd walk around. I love books. I mean, I'd walk around the Scholastic School Fair and go, oh, these look great. And I remember one time, they were really trying to get me to read in grade school. I mean, and I wanted to. I just couldn't do it. But one of my teachers, he goes, I'll buy you this book. And it was, this kid at a circus. And I was like, they were like, so how do you like the book? I'm like, I don't like this book. I don't like this book. And it was, and I was just so struggling, but I knew it's like with my career, like I know there's a way out. I just don't know the way, but somebody knows the way,
right?
Because it's like, being a comedian or being an actor, being everything, there's a career path that you try to take and it doesn't necessarily work.
Right.
I always said it was the James Dean paradigm for acting where, you're from Wisconsin and then you move to New York City and then you work off Broadway and then off Broadway and then off Broadway and then finally you're on Broadway and then you go to LA to make movies. Like that was the romantic version. And careers are not like this. Some people, but very, very rare. Most careers are like this, even like big, well-known people.
Sure.
So, with this learning issue, which has become now a lifelong thing, and I am a reader now and a listener, thank God for Audible. It's one of these things where you've got to want to learn to get over that hump. Some people, it's really easy. And they're lucky and they're I would assume, very successful. But depending on where you're from, and I'm from kind of a row home area, Ambler, Pennsylvania. It's as if somebody pulled a neighborhood out of South Philly and put it right outside of the city. Some of the people I know never got out of there.
Very true. Yeah.
And they may be intelligent, they may not, they may have a learning disability, they may not, but we're in a day and age now. But I came across the psychology of winning, I think it was called, maybe like 20 years ago at a garage sale, maybe more. And I remember listening to that going, oh my God, like you can change your thinking. If you change your thinking, your life can change.
Absolutely.
And then I started getting into Buddhism, and one of the, there's many tenets in Buddhism. Everything's by numbers. But one of the things was, again, like you can change your thinking. And if you change your thinking, your life will change. So I'm thinking like, wait a minute, I'm hearing this message in multiple places. This was never discussed by my parents or in school or any, my church or anything like that. So when you learn that if you change the way you think, you can change your life, you can change how things don't have to happen to you.
Right.
You can make things happen. You can take that energy and kind of push it out. So, that was kind of a long answer to your question.
I love the long answers, and I think that it's interesting how you talk about what that did to you. I remember in the same case where in speaking, I was flip-flopping words with dyslexia.
Wow.
I would actually put an ending to another word that I was trying to say after the first word at the beginning of that word, and then it was like, how did I just make that word up?
Yeah.
Right. So, and then I started looking into it and I said, this has to be a challenge. At the same time, you said something fantastic there, which was you started to learn how to use the instrument, which was the voice, and the different depths of it and the ranges, right? And I realized that today it's helped me in the same way be a better communicator.
Oh, for sure.
So less than it was a disability, it became a proactive thing that I started to work on, in which we could leverage in terms of how we communicate, whether you're on stage, off stage, doing a skit or what have you.
The human voice is so important. I'm not saying I have a specifically great speaking voice, but there are those people that you meet who have just such a great, there's a confidence and a warmth in their voice. I think there's now more than ever. There's so many peak performers and so many speakers, and I see so many keynotes. And I think if you're not aware of how you sound, and that's a whole nother issue because, I can hear. One of the things I learned is being able to hear myself. It makes such a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Makes such a big difference.
Yep.
And it can hold you back or catapult you forward or,
I took that seriously when I was trying this path of being a better communicator, and I saw an ad from Roger Love, who works with a lot of celebrities, and I was like, oh, he's talking about this voice, and so I just went and explored it. But that's a good point there, John. I want to unpack what you just said about two things. One is being aware of how you sound, right? So reality is not everybody's as gifted or has realized that gift through a lot of years of practice and work like you have, or several other peak performers or very good communicators to whatever extent that may look like. In terms of two things you said there, which very importantly, I think today more than ever, how you think, right? How you think about life and what you do to get on the train of beginning to think different from a practical standpoint, from maybe your experience. What does one do to start to reframe how they think and basically weed out the old and bring in the new, plant the new? And also, second question on top of that, is begin to pay attention to improving the quality of their voice, right? Regardless of where you're starting. You may not want to jump on a podcast because you think you sound right, funny,
true, 100%.
Silly, or whatever that is. So how do we go about taking the idea of that and improving it today for somebody out there that's listening?
Well, I'm going to answer the second one first.
I didn't throw the third question at you yet.
Yeah. Oh, okay. But I just want to, as with everybody, most people, when they first hear their own voice, and they hear it much more now, like think about it, like for hundreds of years, no one heard their voice. And then there was a long period of time where singers and movie stars and people like that heard their voice. Now everybody hears their voice because of their iPhone, because of, being on podcasts and whatever it is. And most people have the same exact reaction. Like, that's my voice? Yep. Is that how I sound? Because there's something very specific about the way we're built as humans. We can hear our own voice. If you could hear your own voice in your head, you'd drive yourself crazy. Yeah. You would literally drive yourself crazy. So there's this built-in disconnect. I mean, we all talk to ourselves, but that's not in our own voice. That's that brain voice. But you don't hear yourself. If you do, you're in a lot of trouble. Because I've been on stage and I'm thinking, I can hear my own voice. I'm thinking, oh shit, I forgot my lines. You know what I mean? Like, oh crap. But I had to go through so much speech therapy, and I did hear my voice recorded, and I'm still not used to it to the day. I listen to myself. I'm usually doing an impression, but hearing your own voice, and it is simply the most important thing, because you may not think you have, you may not think you elongate words, or you may think like, I moved from New York 20 years ago. I don't have an accent. What are you talking about? All those little things. And that's very over the top, but you think you sound one way, but you don't, because you don't hear your voice. You don't experience your voice the way other people experience your voice and a recorded version.
That's a great point.
And I learned this from, because, ear, nose, and throat person. Your voice in your head, even as I'm speaking, is kind of softened because of your head, right? Because the tissue in your head and the things in your ear. So you may sound even nicer, like you might have a sweeter voice in your head than you actually do. And it throws, all that stuff throws people off. You have to hear what you sound like. There's two important things. I think, we've got so many peak performers now and so many keynote speakers and, Ed Milet and this person and that person, they get on stage and they're very even Anthony Robbins. Okay. You've got to hear your voice, because you have to know how you're being perceived. And this is in any business. If you're speaking in front of 5 people, if you're a department head and you have 5 people, you need to know how you sound. And secondly, communication style. Style is really important. Some of us can be very abrupt and almost borderline hurtful, but you think you're being to the point. And there's that, I don't need stylistic thing. I know how to talk to people. I've been selling cars for 25 years. But if you want to move ahead, you have to have a specific style. And there are people who will go through that, and you can certainly read books, but your communication style with how you actually sound are just these key components to moving forward in your life.
Yeah.
And then and even before that, if you want to put, there's no real order, but it is so easy now. Well, it's always been, right? My mom was very negative, and the worst was going to happen every single day.
Sure.
Oh my God, it's going to break down. I'm going to run out of gas. Oh my God, they're going to shut off the electricity because we're going to and this is your self-talk day in and day out. And you're a guy at a bar and you want to approach a girl. She's never going to talk to me, man. Yeah. She's never going to talk to me. I look the way I'm doing. Whatever it is, like, you can change that. You can change your self-talk. You can't fool yourself, like, I'm 6'5". No, you are who you are. But it's just as easy to say, today's going to be a fantastic day. Yeah. And that chemical release of saying, today's going to be a fantastic day. I'm going to get so much done. I'm going to make time for myself. You could just say, today's going to be a fucking nightmare. I have so much to do. I can't get a break. Well, you can choose either one.
Yeah.
And so many people are in that default place. Even I fall into that.
Sure. We all do.
We all do.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, you can say, and just saying it, and say it out loud. I say it in the morning. I say, this is going to be a great day. I'm going to have a productive day. Something really cool is going to happen today. And something will, because you're putting that out there. Let me tell you something. That energy that we put out, good or bad, positive or negative, it goes out. It goes out. And it'll come back. Whatever it is, it'll come back negative, or it'll come back positive. And here's the other thing that I've really learned from a lot of reading, and one of the things I listen to every single morning. And they ask, are there going to be challenges today? 100%. 100. Something is going to come up that you did not. It wasn't even conceivable. It wasn't even on the list. It's going to come up and it's going to happen. What's the best way to be prepared for that? Knowing that there's a challenge coming. Just like that thing comes, whatever it is, something you weren't expecting, a bill, and you fall apart, or you're like, I know something great's going to happen today, and conceivably there's going to be some challenges. There's going to be there's a challenge every day, but let's learn from those challenges. There might be a one out of left field you really weren't expecting, but just be ready for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
For how you frame that with speaking it out loud, I think is incredibly powerful. What about the person? Because I think a lot about this in terms of the affirmation, right? Projecting it, saying it out loud. Have you found something to be more effective around stacking the continuation of that thought so that it's not just verbalizing it? Because a lot of people just say stuff and then they never get it to stick, and therefore they actually never really experience change on more of a permanent level.
Right.
So for you, obviously, you've lived a long, very incredible life. You've learned a lot. How do you approach that of not just saying it, but also giving it some more depth so that it plants itself and becomes more natural and consistent in how it evolves, right? Versus just being something that's said and nothing actually ever happens.
And the other, you have to say, I feel you have to say, but you have to back it up with something.
Right.
So, and it's very easy for all of us to just discount anything we've done. But when you say, I'm going to be a healthy and successful person, if you're making it to the gym every day or 5 days a week, you're acting on that affirmation. And you should make that mental connection. If you land a big deal, you close a big deal, you need to connect it to that. All those things, everything's got to connect. It's like connective tissue or links. I think of it in links in a chain, because, the more links you make, the more that connects back to you. Are you going to have setbacks? Yes. But that doesn't mean you aren't a successful person. Everything has to move forward, and you got to anchor it in something. Because, there's plenty of people who do the affirmations. Nothing's happening. It's like, well, do something. You know what I mean? Like make the cold call, make the warm call. close that deal, follow up with clients you've already worked. There's so many things that you can do on a given day that kind of moves you forward.
Well, I'm gonna interject because this is gonna get fun. So I am very aware of what you're saying, and say it, follow through with the doing it.
Yes.
I think that in your line of work, similarly, there is a lot of potential failure, as with anything.
Yeah.
And being ridiculed and or laughed at, and I guess in your world, laughed at is a good thing. So not being laughed at, right? Whereas a quiet audience.
Dead silent audience.
Right. So there is an element of, okay, I said the thing, and now I have to decide to go do the thing.
Right.
And in that decision to go do the thing, a lot of people are met with the resistance of doing the thing. Now, because if you just said cold call, I don't know what to say. I have no idea how this is going to work. Maybe for you, you're getting up, preparing to do an impression, and you're like, well, I don't really know if I can get this one down properly. So my question of where I'm going with that is, how do you remove the resistance in that gap between I've said it and now I need to do it, so that you actually do the thing, right?
Right.
Because you've got to have a recipe for something that pushes you through when it's scary or it's terrifying or something like that. And by the way, I think that at ground zero is what a lot of people struggle with at every next juncture of their life where they're going into something, right? It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done it before.
Right.
And therefore, they paralyze themselves and they don't do it and they don't get the results that they want out of it. So you see where I'm trying to bridge that?
Oh, yeah,
between
totally.
saying it and then they need to do it. We know they need to do it,
right?
But they don't do it. Let's figure out how to get them to do it. What do you say to that?
Well, if you're going to be, if it applied to me, okay, it's a steep climb. You know what I mean? Because you're always having to go on to the next thing and the next thing. And it is scary, you know, and there's been times where I'm about to go out on stage, like, I'm not really, this script isn't where I want it to be, or, you know, and there's a potential here. This could backfire. Not like getting like down on myself, but be prepared. And I could go out there and bomb, which rarely happens because I do prepare a lot. But anytime something hasn't gone off, well, I should say, before I go on stage and things may not be like rock solid, I've always said, well, I've been doing this for like 40 years now, so I made it this far.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
But not when you were getting going.
Oh, no, right? Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, everybody has a first step some point.
Oh, yeah. I remember, just going way back to when I was doing stand-up in the 90s and constantly going to open mic nights and just feeling the feelings, because it's all comedians. And you're going to go up there and like, these guys are going to this is a hostile audience. It isn't like a corporate audience that wants to laugh. It's happy to be in Nashville for the week. And the thing is, it's like, I can't fail. Why not? In certain situations, give yourself permission to fail.
That's it. That's so
Just
good.
give yourself permission to fail, because what's going to happen? Your career's over. You don't have a career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You might as well go out there and just don't hold back. Don't hold back in life. Don't hold back. Just do it. Just do it. And it is, I swear, if you've never done, if you haven't gone up in front of a bunch of comedians at a comedy club on an open mic, you almost rather jump out of a plane with no parachute, because it's so, you're like, what am I doing? Why am I here? But there's something inside you that brought me there. It's something inside all those guys, and women who were there, who they're there because they gotta get on stage. They gotta say something. They wrote something that they thought was funny, and they have to express themselves, and even just expression itself can be very scary.
But freeing.
Yeah, but freeing. And then when it works, it's great. I mean, I had really got lucky early on, had some really great sets and lots of laughs and all that stuff, and had a couple of amazing years. And then I had a show in the Poconos at one of those, resorts in the Poconos. And I told somebody, and I was headlining. This was a big deal. I'd worked my way up, and I told somebody about it, and they said, death room. And I said, what? They says, that room is death. I'm like, what are you talking about? Just go do it. I don't want to say anything. So I go to that job. They screw up my opening music, which sets up my entire bit, right? They mangle my name, right? And then the audience, the closest person to me, I'm not kidding, was like 25 feet away. In this weird room with this, and I died. I went through 45 minutes of material in less than 20 minutes. And I died 1,000 deaths. And I just remember thinking, I was driving back to New York. I lived in New York at the time, just crying my eyes out, like totally beating myself up the entire drive. This is before I kind of like got a handle on things. And the only upside of it was I needed to rewrite my act, make it modular, because if something screws up, like that whole opening thing where the music set up the whole bit and they can't play the music, well, I'm dead. I'm dependent on somebody else.
Right.
You have to remove a lot of dependency in life. If you want to succeed, you truly have to be as independent as you can be in a situation like that.
What does that mean?
Well, if something's going to go wrong, technically, it doesn't apply to everybody, but in a situation where, well, I take that back. You're gonna do a PowerPoint for a potential client and everybody from their groups in there, and the cable is not the right cable, and you cannot put that on the screen.
That's happened.
And you're like, okay. All right, it's not gonna, because this is my. All right, be prepared.
Yeah.
It's like the military. It's like, we're gonna hit the ground. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. If we don't hit the ground, if we don't, it's if you can think through, and it's not to be exhausting, but if you can think through the fact that this could potentially not happen, this could potentially not happen, this could potentially not happen. We all want to have a plan, and that plan is important, but there's elements in that plan that may not go your way.
Sure.
And those are the moments where you can really rise and either be like, oh, I always carry an extra cable. I always have this. You know what? I don't need to do this PowerPoint. I'm just going to tell you guys about it. I'll read it and let me explain this to you because I'm so passionate about it's those moments those are the make or break moments. And I've had those moments and it's like, well, this is how it is.
Right.
I can't waste any time. I have to do this.
But those are the ones that strengthen you the most.
Totally.
Right? So next time you're almost invincible after that.
And also that PowerPoint could be, and I say this to myself because I've had to remove certain things and props and everything because it's like they become a crutch. There's so many things in our lives that have become a crutch because there's so much and there's so much technology. But when you get down to why someone is successful in anything, it's that person's ability to talk to somebody else one-on-one. To this day, that goes back hundreds of years, but it's the people who can connect with somebody else one-on-one. And that's why the speaking is so important and your style, your communication style, it always comes, and that's why you can see this. That's why certain people, there's going to be a big star in whatever field, and you're going to see that person has this incredible charisma. And it could be manufactured charisma or they just know how to connect with people.
Sure.
And I remember hearing about, Bill Clinton. And I remember Newt Gingrich said, hey, I can't be alone with Bill Clinton because Bill Clinton is one of these people. And I met some big CEOs. I've been very lucky. I've worked for some major companies. But I've met these people, not Bill Clinton, but these types. And you start talking to them and you're having a conversation with them. Like, I can't believe I'm talking to the CEO of American Express and he's just having a conversation. And I feel like I'm the only person in the room. They just engage and lock in. And I'm thinking this guy's got a lot of shit to do. And he's talking to me. And I've always been amazed by that. And I've gotten to work with certain companies year over year. And these guys, and sometimes women, you'll talk to them and they'll say, hey, the last time we were speaking, and this is like 6 months ago, a year ago, the last time we were speaking, John, you had mentioned that you were going to be writing a screenplay about this or that. I'm thinking like, I've already forgotten about that. This guy remember. And in the interim of those months, he's interacted with literally thousands of people. Right. And there was nobody whispering in his ear. And those, if you can be engaged in life, I think you'll have such a much better, fuller life, because the relationships that you have are just more, they're deeper, they're more important.
Today. Yeah. Especially today, where it's harder than ever to stay focused when you got a phone next to you, you're thinking about what you got to do next.
Yeah.
What's going on today, to be in the moment right here.
I've got
my
phone right here, and I'm going to actually put this down. I am.
Don't do what he just did.
I'll tell you why. I had a meeting with somebody very high up in the film industry, and I make a living as a performer, and I'm thinking about my phone's going off. We had this lunch meeting. He never checked his phone once. This guy is far more important than me, runs a multi-million-dollar business. And I'm like, I should really check my text messages, because why? I can't be engaged with this person for 45. I'm not a doctor. No one's on life support. The plug's not about to be pulled. But he was able to sit there the entire time and say, what do you think of this? And how are this? And I'm thinking like, I was amazed.
So what's your answer to why you couldn't?
I'm my own self-importance. I have to get this. This could be so, and it's not. It's not. We're at a point. I can only speak for myself, but we're at a point where like things are moving so fast. You think everything becomes important to the point where nothing becomes important.
Wow,
so
powerful.
It was for him to have this meeting with me. This was an important meeting. He's taking his time out of a very busy schedule, far, far more important than mine. And it took me like 15 minutes to kind of like, you know what? If he's doing this, this is where I should be. I should be in this moment. This is an important moment. This guy's a big wheel, and I should enjoy this. We're having this great lunch at some LA restaurant. And that was a big turning point for me. And it's happened since a number of times, and it always blows me away. These are real decision makers. These are people who have hundreds of people under them, but they take the time that when they're having lunch, a lunch meeting or whatever meeting, they're in that meeting.
That's really powerful coming from someone like you that always has to be on and, sort of front and center with people. And I like what you say, because it's a level of I'm taking responsibility and admitting that I have the challenge too.
Right.
But here are these guys that, and again, it's perspective, because if they're all winning at a degree, well, that doesn't make you less than or not equal to. It's just they've chosen to operate differently, which in some cases might be admirable.
Right.
Right. But I also know very successful people that do the opposite.
Oh,
right.
Yeah,
so, it's kind of a decision point for someone to say, hey, how do you want to be perceived? Like, how do you want to engage when you're with people, right? What do you want to be remembered for? I don't want to come in here and look at my phone all the time when I'm doing a podcast, because then the guy would be like, that was a jackass. Like, he wasn't even paying attention to what I was saying. Like, why do I want to communicate with that guy?
Right.
I'm not going to talk any good about him, right? So why I like what you just said is because anybody that's listening can choose now to think about. What I loved about what you said was self-importance. Like, that's a really, like, there's the self-care, there's the self-love, there's all the self, but self-importance also can be negative and or positive, right, John? Like you just said, it's like self-importance is like ego versus self-love, and self-care is, not when I'm engaging with somebody, not thinking about my world and my world only, right? So
and like you made a great point. Self-care, getting to the gym, taking that moment of meditation, doing the things that you need to do, communicating with your partner, your spouse, whoever it is. Those things are all important. The self-important stuff. And listen, I'm far from perfect. There's plenty of times I'm talking to my fiance and I'm like,
same.
And she'll do the same thing. We are both busy people, but more and more I'm like thinking, I can
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
can wait.
yeah.
You know, because if you're going to have that experience with somebody, have it
Mm-hmm.
and be engaged. If you're having dinner, how long is it going to at your house?
Right.
How long is it going to last?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
we're just so distracted. And I remember I just saw this video of it was in 1950s and like a scene from not from Greece, but something where the girls are all on the phone talking to each other. We crave distraction. And we crave that, you know, wanting to do something. And I just thought it was interesting. Like now those same girls, you know, decades and decades later, instead of being on their phone in their bedroom, their princess phone, they're on a mobile phone. And we just, you know, we're built that way, the whole fight or flight kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But if you can kind of suppress that and kind of be where you are, it's so important.
Sure.
You know, I remember being at an event and literally everybody at the event was looking at their phone and texting. I'm thinking, who are they talking to? This is everyone they know. You know? And years ago, I'll just make one quick point. So years ago, pre-mobile phone, when I used to fly out of New York all the time, there were phone banks, you know, in the terminal. And at your gate, there were 4 to 6 phones. And on most flights, I remember, you know, people were sitting there before they took off. They're reading the newspaper. They're reading a book, whatever it was. And those phones might be filled. Those 6 phones were filled. Maybe. There was no line to use the phone at the airport. You know, you were flying and you wouldn't be in contact. Now, that same gate, 30 years later, everybody's on their phone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's more knowledge now. Yeah. We have the ability to access more knowledge than a king or a prince or just about anybody. We literally have all of history at our fingertips.
Right. Absolutely.
Is anybody any smarter?
It doesn't seem like it.
No.
It doesn't seem like it at all.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. It's actually got, I think, the majority dumber.
Right.
Right. Because I think it's shortcutting the way that their brain actually works, in my opinion.
Right.
Right. It's dumbing it down. It's more, it's very quick, snappy versus depth based.
Right.
And that's where I think we're losing, right? Because there's no longer the aspiration to go into something with any extreme amount of interest deep enough to understand it. It's like quick hit, microwave, fast, boom, boom type of thing. And I think the brain is responding to that. And that's what I think we're seeing overall.
Yeah, and thank God there's people like Ryan Holiday and the whole Stoicism movement, and there's a lot of people that I follow. Tom starts with a B. Yes.
Yeah. Impact theory.
Yeah, all of these, there are this core group, I'd say of about maybe 50 to 75 really good people that are taking the deep dive. Tim Ferriss, he's fascinating. There are these people out there, I call them online mentors that you can learn so much from. You know, I actually physically read his books along with doing Audible because they're so rich. Tribe of Mentors. Tribe of Mentors. What are there, like 150 people in there? Yeah, that's a doorstop. That's a doorstop. But when I was reading that book, I mean, I literally couldn't wait to get to the next person. What's this person doing in the morning? How does this person end this day? And all that kind of stuff. And I got so much. I got so much out of it. And the very first time when I was a kid, there was a singer. Her name was Lola Falana. Do you remember her by any chance?
No, not at all.
She used to perform here. And I remember in an interview, like on Merv Griffin or something, Merv Griffin said, "So what's a day like for you?" And she went through the day and at the very end, and she goes, "And before I go to bed, I always review the day. And is there something I could have done better during the course of that day? So maybe an interaction with somebody or something I could have made someone's life better." And I remember I was little. I mean, I was a little kid. And I remember that stuck in my mind, like, who reviews their day? Who reviews my parents' day? I don't know. No one's reviewing the day here. And that has stuck with me to this day. So go back to when Merv Griffin was in his prime, and I'll probably need to look that up because I brought it up before, but it had such an amazing. We are all going. That was then. We are all going 1,000 miles now.
Yep.
You know, to take the time at the end of the day and the beginning of the day to look over the day. And one of the programs I'm looking at now, they actually, on Sundays, you review the coming week. Go through the entire week with your partner, you know, not your business partner. You're like, like, hey, you're like literally figuring out where's the time, where's some, you know, about it's Brandon Burchard.
Brendan Burchard,
yep. It's one of his things, and I just thought, wow, and this all can be done. It is not easy, you know, but once you get into these processes of doing this kind of stuff, it's better than like ping-ponging through your day, through your week. You know, you're not always going to stay on track. But if you at least lay it out, it's a roadmap as opposed to trailblazing every single week. You know?
Do you...
and that's really applicable to me as someone with ADHD.
No. Like, see, what you just went into is... in essence, in my mind, how I wanted to start steering the conversation, because you're a fantastic performer, right? And I think about a lot of people that perform really well, but they're running from a lot of what's not working in their life or what demons they've buried underneath the carpets and whatnot. And it sounds like you're actively doing the work to marry the two, between the talent and the soul searching.
Oh yeah,
and the humanity side of you, which leads me to, and I'm most curious about this because it's something that I've been, I would say, the last few months
baby.
really responding to differently now that I have a baby, and it's changed how baby. Even that's funny when you say it. I am purposely doing what I can to work, like you said just there, and all those books and what have you, to find more center and more peace and not be so comparative to I'm upset because I'm not where I want to be living in all these different frustrations and these angsts. And I think about a performer and someone like you, and I'm just naturally curious. And the question is are you at peace? Or are you only at peace when you're performing? Or are you independent of the performance, and are you at peace at home if you're not performing and you're just being yourself with your fiance? Would you jump into some of that? Because I guess I just have like a selfish curiosity around how you determine the very poised place in your life where you're meeting yourself in the middle and you're as best as you possibly can be from a Ryan Holiday perspective, from a Brendan Burchard perspective, when you're not out there showcasing yourself out to the greater world.
I would say when I'm not performing, I am comparative. I'm comparative to myself. Like, I had a much better year last year. And also, you can't help but compare yourself. But in the end, that's just folly, because it's pointless. You can only do what you can do. And you are you. You know, that's what the reason people hire me is because I am unique in what I do. It's the same reason they hire you. You're unique. You're you. I'm me. And a lot of times I want to go like, why isn't my career further along the line? Or how come this didn't happen? Or why did this person get this? And it's to the point where you can only do what you can do. Yeah. But I really used to beat myself up. And I had friends, very talented friends, and I was so happy for them, but they went on to like network television shows and feature films. And I was, you know, and I think, well, and my fiance will say to me like, well, you did feature films and you've been on network shows, but I'm not right now. So you have to you've got to take everything in and kind of hold where you're at. Yes, you're always going to want to have more. You're always going to want to be bigger and more successful. But the fact of the matter is, I'm much more comfortable now with, I've had a pretty amazing career. I've been on covers of magazines and all this stuff. And I have to remind myself of that sometimes because, you know, going back a little further, there was a point where I was that guy that was always on. I was that guy. And I was funny and my friends loved me for that. But it was kind of exhausting and it wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary to be on all the time. And I went through years of therapy and a lot of reading and part of that is kind of not running away from something in that particular case, but not being me, not being authentically me. I just want to be the funny guy. I just want to make you laugh. I want to do voices all the time. And when that kind of peels off, then the opposite happens. Like, I'm really boring.
Yeah.
I'm pretty boring. But yet you still have friends. So they appreciate who you are as you, and that way you can connect. And going back to what I was talking about, it's easy to have a one-on-one connection with somebody who's not constantly making a joke because that becomes like a personality firewall. Like you don't want to let people in, and I still, when I was a kid, that whole thing, when I was 5 years old and performing, and that went on for a long time, but to have the affirmation of other people laughing at your stuff, that's a big deal because if they're laughing, they like me.
Sure.
And that went on for a really long time. I just did a show in Nashville and 1,500 people and I killed and it was fantastic. That's the juice.
That's the drug.
Yeah, it's the drug, man. Yeah. That is the drug. You killed it and the client is overjoyed. And the the production company is over. Everyone's great. And those are the moments you live for, but you can't live for them because life is all that other time.
It's a big that's very subtle what you just said right there. The moments that you live for, I gotta come closer to the mic because I get yelled at. The moments that you live for, but you can't live for them.
Right.
So I think what you're saying is you're getting in position to share in this great moment of a crowd laughing, applauding, and that's, in essence, glory. But if you only think about the glory all the time, then you're missing everything else that's going on around you.
Yeah.
To some extent.
Because a plug gets pulled. I was just on stage and everyone loved me.
Yeah,
I'm in my room by myself. When I used to do stand-up, I'm not kidding. I would perform, even if it went well, or it was usually a feature, a middle act. But I'd be back at the hotel and I would just cry my eyes out. Like because the whole day boiled down to a 30-minute set. If we had 2 shows, that's an hour. But you've all day Friday, all day Sunday. If you get there, and all the Thursday, it's just a lot of downtime. It was one of the things that I had a problem with stand-up because I was so agitated. I got a show tonight. I have a show tonight. Let me work on my act. I literally couldn't do anything else. Doing corporate is so different and great audiences and they're so engaged, but it was really tough for me. And I stopped at a certain point when I got one of my first corporate jobs. I was like, I don't think I'm doing any more stand-up. Yeah. But that time doing stand-up was so valuable for a lot of reasons, to become a better writer, to write more concisely, stage time, all those things. But also it was like, what do I really want? Because when I started doing stand-up, I was like, well, it's a career path because you're a comedian, then you get a TV show, and then you're going to move. But when you start going out on the road and you're doing comedy clubs in New York, in Connecticut, in New Hampshire, in Delaware, and all those places, none of those places, there is not 2 of those that are the same. They're not, and it's something you don't think about. But most ballroom theaters are the same. Most theaters are every comedy club is different. Every staff is different. Every owner is different. You stay at some place and you're in a broom closet. You know what I mean? They call them the comedy condos and all those things. They can be horrifying. It's like a shooting gallery. And it was like, oh, this isn't what I thought this was going to be. And then when I got my very first corporate job and they flew me first class and I sat at the Swan at Disney and I worked with this amazing production team. And the show just was incredible and I made a lot more money. Yeah. I was like, oh.
This is better.
This is what I want.
Yeah.
this is what I want. And that night, my very first show was for Sony, of all people. It was a huge show. And I just was a small part of that show. But I went back to my room that night and I took a yellow piece of, legal pad and went right down the middle. And I listed every city I could think of in the US and then every company. And I said, that's where my money is. My money's there. It's not in a comedy club. It's these places doing national sales meetings, traveling around the country and around the world, working with great teams, because that's the element that I needed. Because, with stand-up, you walk off stage, unless you know the other comedians, you're pretty much by yourself in Pittsburgh or wherever you are. And it's a very lonely existence. And I also came to a great realization, because I had to run a shows and I was working with some really big headliners. And I remember thinking, these guys are really good. I'm funny, but these guys are really funny. And they had become road warriors because they didn't get, and these are people who came up with David Letterman and Tim Allen and you name it, that whole crop that had series in the 90s. Like these guys were like their friends, but they couldn't break out. And I suddenly saw the limitations of it. It's come back around now with a lot of the social media. But at that time in the 90s, late 90s, I was thinking like, if I'm not as good as them, I'm good. I'm not as good as that guy. And if he can't get out of this, and if he can't get a series, then that's not where I should be. Yeah. And the corporate was happening right around that time, that transition. So it was an amazing moment. And then meetings over these that was 97. I kind of made the switch, 98, 99. It's been just incredible, And I get to do what I like to do. Yeah. And I probably get to do more of it. Yeah. To be able to do 35 minutes on stage, to do multiple characters in one meeting, to have an engaged audience, to be in the Bahamas or Cancun or wherever you are for these meetings. It's just incredible.
You remind me of a couple things that you said that I could not agree with more. One was when I was here in Vegas, my whole life been here. But from 20 to 30, I was in the nightclub business, and I would go out every weekend, take people out, get high, drunk, drugs. Right? That was the routine. And if I went out on a weekend, which was almost every weekend, right, it became so exciting and so addicting that after Sunday came and everybody left, and if in the next weekend I didn't have another group coming in, or if there was nowhere to go out, I became extremely depressed. Yeah, because there was nothing next for me. Yes, I was just back to myself, and I'm like, I don't know who I am right now. Right. I'm high every weekend. I'm partying. I'm living the life. People are giving me cocaine and Molly and drinks and all that, paying for it all. And then on Monday, like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? And then it was the same with festivals and music concerts, same time frame.
Yeah,
right?
when it's over.
When it's over.
Yeah.
It's miserable. So I fully understand that. And then when you said you don't really know until you get into it, when I went and traveled the country speaking, when I first got sober right after that, I remember seeing everybody on stage and going to these big events with lots of these speakers that you're talking about, Les Browns, those big names. And I was like, I want to do that. And then I got the opportunity to go do it. And then I was pulling bags. I was setting up freaking metal bars. I was like, this isn't what I thought it was. This is far from what I wanted to do. I thought I just got to get up here and talk the whole time and share my story. There's two people in the audience. I was like, yeah, I have to reassess this whole thing. I have to figure out what the hell I want to do in my life. So anyway, that's my relatable story to what you just shared there. But
it's the same though. That moment when it's all, I've worked on a number of feature films. I've been very lucky. They're like there's parody film, date, epic movie, date movie, all those kind of things. But I remember, and they're fun. They're feature films, and you've worked on these things. And when they're done, and they drop you back off at the hotel, you've shot for a number of days. It's like, no one knows me. You know what I mean? I got to work on The Good Fight with Christine Baranski. They brought me in for an episode of that, and it was great. It was in Brooklyn. I was on the set. But when you're done, you're done. Mm-hmm. You're
what next?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's where you have to go. That's where you have to be centered in yourself. Right. That's where you have to be at peace. Because if not, you're going to lose yourself. Right. And then probably go create a vice, execute on the vice, and then it can and conversely now, and I think one of the things is because of YouTube and some other platforms, because I'll shoot stuff and put it out, and if it does well, 500,000 views, that's
fantastic. I'm not doing it in front of a live audience. Don't get me wrong. I love a live audience, but I don't need the affirmation as much. I don't need the hate mail either, but again, both ways. But here's an idea for a video. I write it, I shoot it, I edit it, and I put it out. And then I putter around the house. I'm the best at puttering around the house. I can fix stuff for like a week. And, so the drive to constant, like that constant, like, more, what's next? I'll do this show, I'll do that show. That has kind of leveled off as I've gotten older, kind of going back to when I stopped having to be on all the time. I feel like I enjoy life more, that I'm not constant, like, I have to get this audition, I have to do that, because this is a weird business and there is a lot of rejection, which you had brought up. But that is baked in to this business. Sure. And I used to listen to a podcast with The Hollywood Reporter. It was really inside baseball. It wasn't for it was obviously for public consumption, but it was really inside. And I cannot tell you how many actors, and they did everybody on the show, writer, actor, directors, producers, but the actors would say, no, they wouldn't give me that part. They wouldn't even allow me to audition. I shot the video and I knocked on the director's door. I actually got into his neighborhood, and I've heard these stories so many times of very well-known actors. And in my mind, you work for a tire company and you kind of work your way up to a division president or something like that. In this business, performing, because there's so many variables, it's like this, and it never gets easier. It only gets more difficult, and I'm fine with that. I've learned that over time.
Unless you're the A-lister,
unless you're the A-lister, but brand. Even people like that have fallen out and had to come back. I mean, look at John Travolta. His career was over for some reason. Who knows why? But Quentin Tarantino thought, you know what? He's perfect. He's really perfect for this role. And it just rebirthed his career. It doesn't happen to the A-listers too much. But, I always say, because I've been lucky enough to speak in high schools about being an actor. And I always say, who wants to be an actor? And obviously it's the kid who wants to be. This is why they're in my group. But who wants to be a movie star? And I explained to them, on any given day in the Screen Actors Guild, 95% of the union is unemployed. 95%. Wow. If 95% of all welders were unemployed on any given day, there'd be riots in the street. Yep. I mean, you can look at any industry, but that's how it is. Of that 5%, those are the ones that are working. And if you convert that 5% to 100%, that's that 1% of that one, they're the ones making the movie. Everybody else is saying, would you like wine with dinner? You know what I mean? Can I bring your car around, sir?
You're not talking about the valet and the restaurant person trying to make ends meet while they're trying to build their entertainment career now, are you?
Yeah. And I always go through the list of best the Oscar winners for women for Best Actress, because if you go back a number of years, it's like Susan so-and-so. And they're like, who's that? I'm like, exactly. This person won an Oscar. You don't know who they are. This is a very capricious business, where people can just never work again for whatever reason, Yeah. They open up a sandwich shop, or most likely they just weren't, because there's new people every single day.
Yeah.
There's not new people trying to sell, accounting services, but there's new people want to be actors every single day. There are people arriving in LA and New York today to become an actor.
And if I watch a new movie on Netflix or on Amazon, I'm always seeing new faces.
Yeah.
And weirdly, I always look for the familiar faces, but it's not as easy to find them. You almost have to go on the hunt because there are so many new actors.
Yeah, and conversely, on a good note, there's so many more productions now. There's so many more opportunities. If you are an entrepreneur and you want to make your own film, you can literally shoot it on an iPhone. There's been a number of films that have been made on an iPhone. So the the barriers to entry have pretty much been removed. So there's a lot of opportunities, and if I want to make something and put it out there, I can put it out there on YouTube, or if I want to put a movie together, I can put a movie together. So there's a lot more opportunity than there's ever been.
Sure.
But it's just that things are expanding. And somebody said this recently, and they said, back in the 90s when we were stand-ups, there were maybe 1,500 working comedians, right? From coast to coast and all the clubs and those given weeks. And he said, there's probably 10,000 right now.
Wow.
And he said, and you can go onto YouTube, and there are people who are really funny and putting out content every day who've never been on a comedy club stage.
Wow.
Ever. And these are really, really funny people. Would they be funny for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? Who knows? But they found their platform, and they found a time frame they can work inside that 30, 60, 90 seconds and create killer comedy.
Sure. Again, do we have 6 hours?
Yeah.
So much said there that's fantastic. You said something that really stood out to me, I think, which is very important and relevant to today with people where they're at in terms of identifying what they really want. Okay. Now I'm going to throw a curveball at you, and actually going to put you back in your I would say pseudo comfort zone. I want you to answer how you would advise someone to get clear on what they want and go in on that. But I want you to do it in Trump's voice.
Oh, okay.
I want you to have some fun. And then we're going to do a little bit of a fun time where I want to hear some more of your impressions with the roster of different people you have as we finish up.
Sure.
And then we'll ask almost a final question, and then we'll wrap this thing up. But this is going to be fun. So the question around that was, because it was very important, is so many things to choose from. You're doing stand-up, you're doing acting, you're doing traveling, and you said, I figured out what I wanted. How can you, in hindsight, help somebody identify that thing that they want faster so they aren't as confused, Trump?
Well, I have to tell you, we live in a day and age where they have the interwebs. Have you heard about this? It's very popular. A lot of people are on it. My son Barron is always on the interwebs. And there are people there who've literally made videos on absolutely everything. If you want to be in publishing, there's somebody who did a video about that. Do you want to be a builder like me, one of the greatest builders in the history of builders? There's videos about that. I would say whatever you want to do. You want to be a diamond cutter? I mean, that seems boring to me, but I love diamonds, and Melania certainly does. But whatever it is, find out more about it. There's a lot of romance. I love romance. No one knows romance the way I'm like the East Coast distributor of romance. I mean, ask Melania or Stormy Daniels for that matter. But whatever it is, find out what it is, because there's a lot of things that look magical, but they're not magical. It's a lot of work, and it's not fun. I have fun. I have so much fun. I'm doing such a tremendous job. And the most important thing is, if you happen to know somebody in that field, your parent might know that person, or a friend of a friend, whatever it is, or your college advisor. I went to the University of Pennsylvania, graduated first in my class. No one talks about that. And I did have Trump University. But talk to people and see if you can talk to somebody who's actually in the business. Buy them lunch. No one was eating lunch until I started talking about lunch. Now everybody eats lunch. I get no credit. Manny. It's sad. It really is. But those things make a big difference. Figure out the questions you need to ask. There's so many businesses now. There's so many entrepreneurs, and people want to help. Believe it or not. I mean, I want to help, but not the way these people want to help. They really want to help. People want to help other people. There's nothing more satisfying than lifting somebody else up with just a little bit of information, a little bit of knowledge. It makes a big difference.
Can you just switch that on at the point that you are in?
He is now unbelievable. At a cellular level.
Oh
at
my
this point.
gosh.
I can maybe do with Austin Powers, baby. If you want to be a spy, baby. or maybe Dr. Evil. If you want to be really evil, okay, not quasi-evil, not semi-evil, not the Diet Coke of evil, just 1 calorie.
Unbelievable, man. I listen, I've watched a lot of Trump, and I mean, it's almost like you're talking to the exact person that you've heard every single time.
Well, I've worked for him a number of times, and I started doing him in 2004.
Wow.
So it's a really long runway. The very first job I was ever booked for as Trump vocally was for Trump.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I got a call from my agent in New York. He said, "Are you doing Trump yet?" And I had worked for Trump in 1990 and 1997 or 98 and one other time. And I had met him a number of times, and I didn't even know what it was for. They said it's a voiceover, but they said, "Are you doing Trump?" And I said, it could have been a car commercial for all I know. And I said, "Yeah, they're in my head. He's there. He's definitely in my head from meeting him." And they said, "Can you do an audition on Monday?" And this was Friday. I said, "Sure." And I ran out and bought the DVD of the first season of The Apprentice, which literally had just come out. And I listened to that for 30 hours. And I had heard Trump on Stern, and I had heard there's multiple Trumps. But the bonus stuff was fascinating because it wasn't like blue team, green team. Today, you're making lemonade. You're making lemonade on the streets of New York. It was, the bonus material had I don't know if you saw that first season, because it's a great season. They're down to the last 4 people. And it's a guy and a girl on one team. And Jim Rancid and Kwame Jackson are on the other team. These 2 are now dating. He's fascinated. Trump is fascinated by this. So, and this is the bonus material. So this wasn't aired. So you 2 are like in a romance or something like that, right? Is this true? You're like dating each other. You like him, right? He likes you. And he was just really into that whole thing. And I'm thinking, oh, his voice is different when he talks about this because he's not on a prompter doing it here. And then if you ever listen to him on Howard Stern, it was a much more intimate thing because it was just him and the studio. Well, I have to tell you, she's very attractive. Very attractive. So it was like, all those things. So I went in and did the audition. I got it. And it was for the Taj Mahal, and Trump was opening the boardroom game, not The Apprentice, because he couldn't get the rights from NBC, but the boardroom game at the Taj Mahal. And it was the same thing. It was a different name. So I recorded in Princeton, where the studio was, I recorded just hundreds of words, phrases, compliments, insults, and they put it all together and just had it ready to go. And so you would be at the Taj Mahal, you'd sign up, you and your wife would go in for the boardroom game. They'd have somebody playing Carolyn Kepcher and someone playing George Ross, who I also met, who gave me a huge compliment. And they would say, "Mr. Trump will be here momentarily." "Oh, we just got word. Mr. Trump's on the line. Hello, everybody." And this is a phone on a speaker, Hello, it's like Charlie's Angels. "Hello, everybody. Listen, I'm working on a big deal here in New York. We're coming up with a brand new building in the city. I can't be there, but George and Carolyn will be there the entire time, and I'll just stay on the phone." And then I gave the assignment of what they were going to do. And then blue team, green team, you were both horrible. You're the worst 2 teams it's ever played this game. Like that kind of thing. And so it was just, I was like, I can't believe I'm working for him. It just killed me.
Incredible, man.
Yeah. And then 2 years later, I got called in again. This wasn't a voice thing. This was full on that I had to do because he was unavailable for a promotion. And they sent me in because the promotion was happening that night on The Apprentice, and they needed promotion for a specific episode. Embassy Suites was the client, and they were redoing all of the uniforms. So I went to Fox News for Fox and Friends to promote it, and they brought a chef with me because that entire month, Embassy Suites was honoring me with a very delicious breakfast, the Domlet. The Domlet instead of the omelet. Do you see what they did there? They changed the name. So smart, these people. And I just was like, well, that's I've worked for him again.
Man,
you know, it's just hilarious. It kills me.
Crushed that, man.
It was so much fun.
It's so perfect. It's perfect.
And it goes back to all that, the speech therapy, working with the speech pathologist, and coming from that part of the world where we have the hard onset. If you listen to people from the Northeast, we hit the front of words, and it's a real thing. It's called the hard onset, because that's a New York, Philly, Boston, that kind of thing where we come in really hard.
Mechanics.
Yeah, and he's really a prime example of it, because he'll come in really tough, and then he'll just trail off. It'll just.
So who else? Let's do a speed round. Maybe you give us, 20, 30 seconds.
Anybody that anything Mike Myers does. So
let's hear it. So let's actually do this, and then I'll ask you my last question. We'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
Let's do. Can you do 10? Can you just? I mean, the top 10 that you're the best at.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Tell us who.
Yeah.
And then just rip. And
okay.
Fun.
This is one of my favorites, because we all have our favorites. But I loved Lieutenant Columbo when I was growing up, and I just loved the way he talked, and I loved his character. I love big characters, obviously, folks. I hate to bother you. I'm a little confused. I love when people play dumb, but they're really smart. And that was the beauty of Columbo. So that's Columbo
there too, man.
Yeah,
that's really good.
And I love somebody like Guy Fieri, baby. Love a piece of taco grease, man. I'm driving the bus to Flavortown, baby. Big guys like that. And another one like him is Larry King, 6 wives, 7 heart attacks. Galik, it's unique. Tomorrow night for the full hour. Tom Hanks' son, Colin Hanks. Obviously Trump. Yeah. And I love, and I always love people like Bill Clinton, because when you dissect his voice, he's got that whole dry thing where he just talks and talks and talks. It. Hey, have you seen Hillary? Neither have I. And then somebody like Jay Leno, like immediately when I heard Jay's voice, I thought, hey, that guy got a speech impediment like me. Yeah, how you doing? And Jay goes real high, and then he goes real low. Hey guys, how are you?
I was a big fan of Jay growing up too.
Yeah, I loved him, but I thought that I always thought, hey, wait a minute, I think he's got a lisp or something. We're so cold in LA today. Yeah. all those type of things. And then currently it's obviously it's Trump. It's Dr. Phil. Hey, what were you thinking? Okay. Today is going to be a changing day in your life. Look, you can put a kimono on a squirrel, but it still won't speak Japanese. All right? It doesn't matter how flat you make a pancake, it's got 2 sides. All right? I want you to start living your life as a lesbian woman.
Oh, man. You're talented, man.
Thank you.
Dude, you're I know that a lot of the conversations you've had really center around that. So it's really expressed in many different ways.
Well, I'm starting to do keynotes now. So I'm kind
incredible.
of taking all of this stuff. Yeah, merging all of these things and using and kind of peppering in the voices, but kind of how I got here and all this stuff that's happening with, peak performance and, learning and continuing to learn and grow. I find all of that. I'm trying to mix it all together.
Good for you, man.
And have a message.
Well, I just want to, as we wrap up, I want to extend my appreciation for you being willing to have the more raw,
I love John it. This is better
type of conversation where it's like all focused on give me all the impressions, give me all the do Trump, and it's like, I know you're exploited there in that arena, man. So I just want to say,
I love it, baby. Yeah. Use me, baby.
Of course, man. Obviously, in the context of our show, our vessel is growth, right? So, it was beautifully done. I feel supremely grateful for you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can people discover you, find you? What's the best point for them to go to learn some more about you? And then I'll ask you my last question.
Sign up for my newsletter.
There you go.
Find me on MySpace.
MySpace still exists?
And Friendster? No. I'm on all the platforms. Most of the platforms, it's The Johnny D Show.
Okay.
I'm on that. On my fan page on Facebook. It's just John D. Domenico. You'll know it's me. It's a photo of Trump, me as Trump. And then on YouTube, which I like, is where I do long form comedy. That is just the John D. Domenico comedy. Perfect. And then all the other stuff. And if you're a business person, I'm on LinkedIn under my regular name, John D. Domenico. And I've got a lot of followers there too, because I don't do everything there, but I kind of keep up with more the corporate stuff that I'm doing. But, I'm pretty much spread out. If you want short stuff, go to Instagram. If you want the long form stuff, go to YouTube. If you kind of want a mix of everything, go to my fan page.
Fantastic,
it's all there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm on OnlyFans.
As Trump.
As Trump eating Cheetos. It's me eating Cheetos in my tiny whities and a white shirt. And I'm not kidding. People have told me to do that. Like,
don't send in messages of having to go to therapy after hearing that. That's not what we're trying to accomplish here.
Right.
Fantastic, man. Appreciate that. So last question is, what does always on the grow mean to you?
Always on the grow is Kaizen. I think about that all the time. How can I make my impressions better? How can I make my performance better? How can I make it, and this as a performer, this sounds strange, less about me, more about the audience. How can I give the audience something they're going to walk out with and kind of use, what's the takeaway? Laughter's great. And that's the main reason I'm hired, is to make people laugh and give them, but I want to give them something to think about. And sometimes it's not possible within the context of the character, but if I'm hosting corporately or doing the keynote, I want to get better every time. I don't want to get here.
Right.
And I always go back and review my impressions. I always go back. I do Ozzy Osbourne, man. You know what I mean, man? And I always realize, Sharon! And I was looking at it, the impression. I saw him and I thought, oh, you know what? He does do I was doing a very high Ozzy Osbourne for a while because he does. He's high on there. But then he kind of drops down, because he runs out of. So I'm always trying to look for those things where, oh, you know what? A little more detail here, a little difference here, a little more dry when I do Bill Clinton or maybe Barack Obama. Where can I keep adding?
Come on, don't leave us hanging on Barack Obama, man.
Here's the deal. Okay.
That was good.
He's got that long, drawn out kind of a Chicago thing.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Oh man, I didn't mean to cut you off. I had to jump in there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but I always want to keep getting better. I want to keep moving. I never want to look at a piece of technology or platform and go, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm already on. I want to keep growing. So keep growing and doing what I'm doing and make it better.
Of course.
Yeah, man. That's what it means to me for growth. And keep reading. There's so many, if I read one of these books and I only get one or two things out of it, I always think that was a waste of money. No, I always think there's something there. There's something there. And I need constant external, like, ooh,
sure.
Like something, oh, that's great. And,
Yeah. Well, in the analogy of you saying you don't want to go flat, I think about the hospital monitor where if it flatlines, you're dead.
Yeah.
Right? So in the same case, that's a great way to image it out. And I think you did a great job today, man, with bringing more than just the laugh.
Yeah.
Right? I knew you were capable of the laugh. That's a given, right? And I think that by virtue of every great thing that you brought to the table and how you see the world, whether it was around, talking about the voice or how to think, being really centered in the vulnerability of talking about, some of the difficulties and just in life and really just championing your message there, your communication.
Right.
It was killer, man.
Thanks,
and
man.
I'm grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John. You're the man.
Namaste.
Let me say this right. John D. Domenico.
John D. Domenico.
Boom.
Of Sunday Morning.
Finish
That's what
it
my
just
name
like
means.
that,
Perfect.
ladies and gentlemen.